Hello, this is a special report. I'm Hartrum, Chief here at Pentwater Police Department. Today, we're going to be discussing some events that occurred on April 8th here in Pentwater and how those events impacted our school. Our goal here today is to discuss how the police department, the local county and state officers worked together during this incident and how it impacted the schools. I want to talk a little bit about the lessons learned. And to that end, we have several people here with us. First is Darwin Mitchell. He is our school resource officer. Then we have Troy Maloney. He is our emergency management person for Oceana County. And then we have Sergeant Mike Fillips. And Mike is jack of all trades. He wears several hats. So I think our emergency manager is somewhat skewed, so he's kind of lopsided. So can you spin your screen around there? There you go.
How's that?
Yeah, very good, very good. So a little bit, just to kind of get started here. Back in 2017, the sheriff's office here in Oceana County kind of spearheaded putting together a school security group that meets. I think we try to meet. Initially, we were meeting a lot more often, but I think now we're down to quarterly. Isn't that right, Mike?
Yeah, we're meeting quarterly.
Right. And so, and why don't I guess this would be a good place for Troy to kind of step in. You want to explain what we do at those meetings and what the purpose of that is?
So our local planning team or the school safety?
The school safety committee.
So school safety committee was fronted by the sheriff's office, spearheaded that. And at those meetings, we bring in superintendents and principals and sometimes guests, and along with our school resource officers and police chiefs and sheriffs to we'll discuss that we're all on the same playing ground as far as how we will respond to incidents at schools. Because the schools have traditionally all had separate ways of doing things. And unfortunately, it's the same responders. And so trying to bring them all together to operate the same way so that we can streamline our responses.
And so this is kind of, now who's your, if you have a helper, Troy, doing that, is that Mike?
Yeah, Mike actually is probably more of a lead than I am in that parts of it, him and Under Sheriff Schiller.
Okay.
I probably help Mike more than Mike helps me.
All right. Mike, you want to talk a little bit about what we kind of instituted over the last several years in the schools?
Yeah, so there's been a lot of change in the state of Michigan and the schools. Having the school safety committee that again was promoted and fronted through the sheriff's office here has been a big help. Being able to meet quarterly with the superintendents, the school resource officers, the police chiefs, obviously the sheriff, under sheriff, and even bringing in fire personnel, emergency management, and medical. We all come together because obviously our children are our most valuable thing that we have, and it's the one thing that we can all agree on that we want to protect. So having that was kind of beneficial. We kind of progressed through that with some resources where we can get live information, real-time information out to the schools if there is some sort of threat or some sort of issue. And then coming in through with the changes being done at the state level, Board of Education's through the Michigan has come down with wanting standardized response protocol. We go through that. You'll hear me in my presentations in that talk about the standardized response protocol, it being through iloveyoguys.org. The Board of Education has kind of pushed for that. The schools in our area have all jumped on board with the local school boards and their powers that be. And with that, there's been some changes in the last few years on how we look at that. And part of that is the verbiage. So we're teaching not only the schools being taught from themselves, whether it be the Board of Education through the state level or different things, they're being presented these verbiage. Well, if we're all not all on the same page, if they say one thing and we think it means something else or vice versa, that's where the standard response comes in. So not only are the schools teaching that with Officer Mitchell teaching that at his school through SRO, and the rest of the SROs and different things teaching that, but we're also teaching that at our yearly in-service to our road deputies and police departments. Every year we do an in-service training, which we are able to incorporate a lot of school safety things with that. And that's not only offered to the sheriff's department, but the local police departments, which Pentwater Police Department also attends every year. So we're teaching the law enforcement officers to have the same verbiage and understand what they're expecting and know what the school is doing at the same time. So it's just opening up that line of communication. And the key thing is keeping that communication on the level that we all understand what we're talking about.
All right, so we've got Troy, and Troy sits on the Region 6 Emergency Management Committee, and that's 13 counties. So then we've got Mike Fillips here, who kind of oversees the things in Oceana County. And then we have Officer Mitchell, who is strictly at Pentwater. And tell us a little bit about what you do and how you incorporate those things there in Pentwater.
Yeah, so when it comes to the school safety stuff, all the schools work together. I'm on the school safety committee meetings that we do, but all the SROs, the school resource officers in our area, meet every so often as well and discuss things in the school and talk about safety. And one of the things is like with the terminology, everyone's going to the same terminology now. So say Chief or I go down to Hart School for something, they're using the same terminology. So one of the things, like we have the flip charts that talk about the terminology that all the staff members have in the school. So if they hear something come over the intercom and they're not sure, or if there's a guest in the room, they can go to that and look to see what they need to do for that specific topic.
Okay. And speaking of guests, we now have Mr. Barter with us from Pentwater Schools, and he's the superintendent there. How you doing, Craig?
Good. How are you guys?
Well, we're hanging in there. We're getting to the nitty gritty. I'm going to put up the standardized stuff, and Darwin, you want to take them through that? Let's see if this works now. There we go.
Yeah. So these are the terms that are used now. It's no longer a hard lockdown, soft lockdown, or whatever term schools used. There's now 5, which is hold, secure, lockdown, evacuate, and shelter. The hold is for if you have something going on, maybe out in the hallway, such as like a medical or a fight between students. It's to get students and staff to stay into their classrooms. Secure mode is if there is something going on outside of the school, and we want to keep everyone inside, and we'll go over that more later. Lockdown is it's now just lockdown. So if there is something serious going on inside or outside, it is now just lockdown, where you'll hide and shut off the lights and everything. There's evacuate for if you need to leave the school for something, and then shelter, like weather, like if we get a tornado up here.
Can you kind of take us through how you train your folks to it? When you get new teachers in and that kind of thing.
Yeah. So at the beginning of every school year, the flip chart that Officer Mitchell just had, we'll make sure that every teacher gets one of those, and we'll go through each one of those with the definitions and what's expected if we have to go into one of those modes. Now, last week, after we went door to door and told everybody, we put in secure mode in an email, and the amount of teachers that basically just telling us secure mode was very helpful, that they were able to take the proper precautions.
Perfect. So that's a perfect segue into where we're going right now. essentially what we had last week, and I want to say back on the 8th, we had some pretty unusual for the village, which we had two different, during the course of one day, we had two different incidents which required us to take some action at the school. And the first was the domestic situation that occurred about not even a block from the school. And because of the proximity to the school, we did go into a secure mode. That was the first one. That was early in the morning. And then in the afternoon, we had another incident that actually occurred at the school. And I think you went into a secure mode when that was going on also. And that is very unusual. One of the reasons we're doing this today is we want to take the opportunity, because of those events, to talk a little bit about what the response was and what we thought went well and what we thought we can improve on. And one of the things we've already talked about here, and is the idea that we try to get everything where standard terminology, plain speak on the radio, and we try to make everything as clear as we can. And here's the reasons why. In Pentwater during the day, during the school year, we will usually have at least 2 officers on during the day. And the reality of the situation is, to respond to one of these situations, it takes more than 2 officers. So our goal, working with the sheriff's department and working with the state police, is literally we should be able to take 2 troopers, 2 deputies, 2 people from the school, throw them into a situation, and they should all kind of react the same. And we do that through a variety of ways. The one that Mike talked about was we do this annual training, which is a 2-day training we do, and we cover how we're going to respond, what kind of terminology we're going to use, what kind of tactics we're going to use, and all those things. The second thing, and this is kind of where Troy comes in, is we really harp on, I shouldn't say we, because it's Troy that harps, but we talk about getting incident command set up so that we can organize ourselves and get things accomplished. So during the first incident that we had a subject that took off on foot from a somewhat violent scene. And we did start incident command. We initiated incident command. But in that incident, we had deputies there from Oceana County. We had deputies there from Mason County. We had troopers there from the Hart Post. We had, of course, folks from our office, and we had Pentwater first responders. That's 6 different organizations that have to work together and try to do it as seamlessly as we can. And that is really coordinated by our central dispatch authority. And they run the radio systems, and they help try to keep us all on the same page. So real quickly, you can go from a very, normal day here to within 10 minutes, you've got all kinds of things going. And just kind of talking a little bit about that day, we were able to get that subject in custody in about 45 minutes after the initial call, maybe a little later than that. So that went relatively well. And we put the school in secure mode very quickly, probably within 10 minutes of when we had that going. Wouldn't you say, Darwin?
Yeah.
Yeah. And the school did just an outstanding job. Our real goal here is to have these events not be a big thing for the students. It should just be run of the mill. This is just another, we're going to do this thing. And I got to tell you, Craig, it worked perfect, at least from what we saw. How did it look on your end?
So it was a little more of a difficult day because we were doing the SAT at the school, and the students were having their scheduled break. So there were students that were in the lobby, and at that point, we just calmly asked them to head back to the classrooms that they were assigned. And then in doing so, my assistant principal and myself went classroom to classroom and told each staff member that we're going to be in a secure mode and to check their email. And after we told them, we just, like I said earlier, calmly just had them go back to their rooms. They were scheduled to be back in their rooms in the next couple minutes anyways. And then we put out the email of secure mode and that there was something that was happening in the village. So, we try to not create a whole lot of panic. We made sure all the doors, which they are throughout the day, were locked. And then we just kind of kept an eye on the perimeter of the building as well.
Yeah. So part of that search response, I think we tried to have drones up. We had a canine there. And fortunately, we had the person in custody before a lot of that went into effect. We did do an incident command, and we did move all of our radio traffic off onto another talk group. And folks should understand that those talk groups are now encrypted. So people in Scannerland typically can't hear what's going on in those talk groups. We don't really do that because of overwhelming privacy issues. We do it because the Criminal Justice Information Center at Lean Field Services requires us to keep confidential all of the criminal justice information that we're discussing. So people's license plates, dates of birth, names, that kind of stuff. We have to keep that off the air. We have to keep that out. We have to secure that. And so Central Dispatch moved to go to encryption about a year ago now. And I think we went about a year ago now. We're just starting to get into that. So all that's encrypted, which, for folks that think they can get on the scanner, that's just not probably going to happen for a while. What else? What am I missing, Darwin, on that first call today?
I don't think anything from the first one.
Yeah.
I just want to add one thing about that is, we have people that come into the building and use the workout facility. So I would encourage them to check our Facebook page or our school page to see make sure nothing's going on. Because in that event, if they would have come up, we wouldn't have been allowed to let anybody in or out of the building during that time.
Right.
So it's important that they check our Facebook page or our we encourage the people that use the gym to use our app, that we would be able to put it out in that as well.
So Troy, you were kind of monitoring this thing from afar. Did you hear what was all going on?
Yes, I was listening closely in my office. What's going on? And you guys had a very well organized response to that. I want to add in here that using this command system, for the people who don't know what that is a tool that we use to take a large chaotic event and bring chaos to it. It's all about span of control and making sure that there's not a bunch of people trying to do the same job at the same time. We spread out those assignments and make sure that they're monitored well. And that's what leads to safe and successful events.
Yeah. So we got past that event and we thought we were going to make it through the day. And then we got another one. You want to take us through that one, Darwin?
Yeah, so the second event happened just after the end of the day. So there was a lot of people outside, kids going home. Outside of a classroom, a subject started banging on windows and doors of a classroom on the building. I was notified by Mr. Barter right away of the situation. We were at the school within a minute and a half of getting this phone call. That subject had already left the school. But before I got off the phone with Craig, I told him that we should put the school on secure mode. And I didn't even realize it was the end of the day. But even for the end of the day, the school did a good job with keeping whoever was inside. And when we arrived to the school where this situation was going on, there was no one. There was only a few people outside, and they were kind of in a distance. And for the people that were outside, they did a good job too. They saw us coming in pretty quick to the school and stopping at the school, and they were all really good at, hey, there's an incident going on. let's maybe go somewhere else, and they got out of the way.
So ultimately, I think that one ended. You ended up finding the fella and having a chat, right?
Yes.
So really, the takeaway that we came away from these two one day was that we were really happy with the response from the school, because there wasn't a lot of panic. It was a lot of, this is just another day in the neighborhood kind of thing. We went to secure mode. We came out of secure mode. It went very well. I think it's important that people understand that just because that day went well does not mean that we stop adapting and learning from these incidents and going over them. And that's really kind of where we can circle back to Mike, because when we get ready for our training next year, and even in the weeks and days since this all happened, we have had conversations and we have talked about, how could we do this better? What could we work better? How can we make our responses better? And that gets incorporated in to, just the process of responding to these calls. So I really can't underemphasize that this is an ongoing, dynamic training scenario. We're learning from everything we do, and we're trying to adapt to new things that are happening, whether it be in Pentwater or anywhere in the nation. When we see something that happens, we immediately start thinking, okay, so what if we saw that happen here? How can we, how would we respond to that? All those kinds of comments go on. What am I missing, guys? Anything left that we need to bring up?
No, I just think that what you were just talking about really hits home, because we did, like earlier in the show, mentioned that we do the annual in-service. And before we put the trainings together for that annual in-service, we go through the yearly events. So obviously we talk about these things, like you just said, right after they happen. And if something needs to be incorporated right away, we do that. But when we set up our training guidelines and our scenarios in January or February, we take into account the things that have happened throughout the year. So if there's something, a training aspect that we want from one of these events, we would incorporate that and get that out not only to the sheriff's department, but Pentwater Police Department, Shelby Police Department, they all attend this in-service training. And then that's also something that we can address during our quarterly meetings at the school safety committees. So yeah, like you said, this is all just a work in progress. Between myself, Under Sheriff Schiller, Troy, we're attending, conventions and looking at stuff, not only, at the national level, but also bringing in stuff international. There's school incidents that go on. Just in 2026, we look at what went on in to our neighbors to the north in Canada, and a lot of the stuff that we're learning here, we're trying to bring that stuff here locally. And again, like you said, learn from it so we can continue to do a better job, because we owe it to our kids to do that.
Exactly.
Lod.
Go ahead.
So just to give a little bit more overview of the modes and the flip chart that Darwin showed, that's a bigger picture. Even though it's a focus on the schools, that's already been incorporated throughout the county buildings, the courthouses. We're starting to incorporate that in our churches and other places of gathering. And it's our goal to make that a standardized document for each place that has any type of form of assembly. So the lessons we're learning from the schools are also helping our entire community be more prepared for these events. Because once again, the same people will respond to those events, whether it's when it comes from law enforcement and the fire service and EMS, it's the same people. So getting everybody, whether it's public or private entities in those same groups operating the same way, will absolutely make us more successful.
Right. And the other thing is, with that yearly training that we do, we're all going to the range here today. But I mean, that is hugely important because for a smaller agency, Shelby, Hart, New Era, Walkerville, for our agencies, we just don't have the depth in our bench, so to speak, that we can just miraculously have 13 people there to help run one of these incidents. So, folks on the street, they might not get the opportunity to see it, but for those of us that are involved in it, when I can see, guys from Pentwater Police Department kind of merge with county and state deputies and troopers, and they all are doing the same thing. They're all using the same tactics. They're all on the same wavelength. That is super, super important to keeping people safe. Not just people on the street, but us. We got to keep ourselves straight. So, yeah. Anything else?
I'd like to take this time to do a quick plug because we've kind of explained to the people the school safety committee, but the sheriff's department is also putting out a places of worship safety network. And if you have any questions in regards to that, send me an email at churchsafetynetwork@oceanasheriff.net. Because we're incorporating a lot of these same things, like Troy had said, from the schools. We're incorporating that because right now, unfortunately, nationwide, not only are our schools seeming to be a target, but our places of worship, our churches are. So we're incorporating a lot of what we know. So could probably pop that email address up on the site as well. Yep. So
I think the other thing we could take an opportunity to point out is what we're seeing right now across the county. I'm trying to think of a good word for it, but the cases we're getting are more often and they're more challenging and certainly more complex than what we normally see. And we're seeing them all the time. I mean, we're seeing mental health calls. I want to say 1 or 2 a day. It seems like the last month. It's really kind of alarming what we're seeing. So, all right. You think we're going to wrap it here, guys? Darwin, you got anything else?
Nope, nothing else.
Craig, anything else?
No, I just think use the use of common language, and I just want everybody to know that we drill, we do as much procedures as possible. The timings being different, but with that, the common language throughout the county will be huge.
One of the things we didn't touch on is how do you communicate out to the parents and significant people in the school population? How do you get that information out to them?
Through our Facebook, or we can send email as well.
Okay.
Through our we have different groups set up through our email system.
All right, so we're going to close it up, folks. I hope you enjoyed this special report here regarding school safety. If you did, please like, subscribe, and comment to this webpage. If something else, you have a question, I will put emails in the comment section so that you can reach out to us and let us know. Till next time, be safe.